So, Anne, what do you think? Will the Republican nomination be done and dusted in 2 weeks?
Well, I know the rumors have been heavy, especially following like the hot mic situation yesterday from Chris Christie when he dropped out of the presidential race. People saying that, or at least he claimed that DeSantis would be out after the first Iowa caucus here in a week's time. Um, I doubt that we'll be seeing the end of DeSantis and Haley in already 2 weeks, especially Haley. The whole strategy for her presidential race to begin with is that she's a former South Carolina governor. And the only reason she had a chance to be a presidential nominee in the first place because South Carolina is one of the first voting states here at the beginning of February. So we definitely won't see her dropping out until at least the South Carolina caucus. But yeah, former President Donald Trump is ahead by 30 points, even when like pundits talk about like a Haley rally. It's within the margins. So I'd still say like the chance of Donald Trump not being the Republican nominee is almost in the single digits. Like Haley is the most competitive race right now is the New Hampshire one, especially after Chris Christie dropping out. He was doing quite well in that state. In fact, he was polling at around 11%. And if you add those polling numbers to Haley's, she can almost kind of compete with Donald Trump's numbers in New Hampshire. But still, it's such a small state, so few delegates to fight for. So it's hard to see how anyone but Donald Trump will end up on the ticket in November. But it won't be officially over, let's put it that way, before at least South Carolina, I think.
To all your listeners, welcome to the inaugural edition of this new format that we're calling GeoPortfolio. My name is Mikkel Rosenvold. I'm the head of geopolitics at Sten Research. With me, I have from more or less sunny Paris, Anne Sandager, and welcome to you. And this is going to be a new format where we discuss all the geopolitical events and their relevance for your portfolio. So we're not simply talking about who's going to win elections or what's going on with wars, etc. We're talking about that, but it's all with the focus of markets, finance, your portfolio. That's generally what we do at Sten Research, but I'll get more back to that a little bit later. And we'll also get back to US politics and in a little bit. First of all, Anne, this format is also meant to be a glimpse into what we're looking at our geopolitical team at Sten Research. And obviously, and for the last past couple of weeks, our main focus has been on the Red Sea. We've written extensively on it. What we're seeing right now is that most shipping giants have directed their traffic away from the Red Sea. We're, of course, talking about mainly traffic from Asia to Europe, usually going through the Red Sea and Suez Canal. They've been redirected south of Africa. This increases the travel time by around 10 days. So it increases freight rates, obviously. Some freight rates have nearly doubled on some of these routes. And perhaps a bit surprisingly, it has led to huge increases in the shares of Maersk and other shipping giants. So basically, this is, in the short term at least, really good news for these shipping giants that their ships are being fired upon in the Red Sea.
It's like a COVID part two almost.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, they do get sort of a window to negotiate higher freight rates with a lot of their customers, and they're probably managing that. So for now, markets are quite content with the shipping giants. We even saw, to add on that, this week that a niche Danish media called Shipping Watch announced that some shipping companies were engaging in deals with the Houthis. And that caused the Maersk and Lloyd's and other shipping giants' shares to plummet immediately, 10, 15 points. And that to me is a sign that the markets really don't want the shipping giants to return to the Red Sea unless they're 100% sure that they can. Right now, it's actually really good for business, at least in the short term for these companies. So that's interesting. In the longer term, and that's of course the main focus here. This must spill over to inflation at some point. I mean, these high freight rates can only end up one place, that's in consumer prices. And on top of the Red Sea crisis, we have an ongoing drought in Panama, which you should definitely watch. This has led to the Panama Canal capacity being decreased. Initially, this doesn't really hurt container shipping, so it doesn't hurt all the stuff we buy from wish.com here in Europe or in America, but dry bulk containers initially. But over the coming 2 quarters, we're expecting even further decreases in the capacity in the Panama Canal, and this will eventually spill over into consumer prices. So we're very much looking into that. We were looking into a scenario of lower inflation and beginning to see lowering of interest rates, especially from the Fed. That might all change. So that's how geopolitics, in this case, a small Yemeni militia firing at some ships, that's the effect that geopolitics can have on global markets. So it's really significant out there. And really
that's what I was wondering. How long do you expect this bottleneck to continue? Like, what geopolitical factors should investors look out for this to kind of ease up a bit?
I mean, that's the big question. Basically, I see 2 ways out right now. One is, of course, a peace in Israel. That's not really on the table, it seems. It seems like they have been withdrawing some troops from Gaza, but they're not in any way done with destroying Hamas. Hamas still exists, and if Israel were to pull out today, Hamas would simply retake the power. So is Israel done? Are they nearing a peace deal? It doesn't look like it. We know that Anthony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, has been traveling extensively to the Middle East this week as well, without perhaps really getting nearer. So that scenario, which would likely end the attacks, is not very likely in the foreseeable future. On the other hand, the U.S. Navy has, and several other Western navies have deployed massive numbers of ships to the Red Sea, and they're basically shooting down everything that the Houthis throw at them or throw at container ships. So at some point, the U.S. Navy will have to ask, what more can you expect, shipping companies? I mean, we have the U.S. Navy down there, we're shooting down everything. So I think at some point, some shipping company, together with their insurance partners, will decide, now is the time to go back into the Red Sea. Now it makes sense for us, it pays off for us, because it is a shorter route, it is cheaper. So at some point, someone will break the deadlock, and then most shipping companies will return. I think this should be likely within a couple of weeks, but it's a tough scenario because these shipping companies are actually making quite good money on on these disturbances. So we'll have to watch that. We will in coming weeks as well. And as a general disclaimer, you and I, we work on our geopolitical team here at Sten Research. For more of our research and even more macro, crypto, all the insights we do, go to stenerresearch.com, pick up a 2-week free trial and read a lot more, especially on the impacts of inflation on inflation prints in the coming months. That's going to be one of our main focus areas. So, Anne, enough about the Red Sea, enough about shipping lanes. Let's head to the US. You wrote an article a couple of days ago that Biden lost $17 billion on the first day of the year. That was quite a catchy headline. What does that mean?
Yeah, maybe I should say that first. It is a little bit of a catchy headline, but essentially it's a reference to the fact that from January 1st, in principle at least, the federal government in the US have undergone an across-the-board 1% cut to their non-discretionary budgets, as it's called. So almost everything, including the Pentagon, including education, etc., aside from like retirement benefits, essentially, which is a big portion of the budget in the US, like 60% almost. That's the technicality. But everything aside from that went an 1% cut on January 1st, which is roughly equivalent to like $17 billion. So quite substantial. And that's a little known, like I want to call it legislative wrinkle from the June debt ceiling deal, if viewers remember that. It was a little provision that GOP members got in there to kind of motivate lawmakers to get a budget deal done, essentially, before the deadline and avoid like more postponements, these continuing resolutions, as we call it, where budget deals are just being postponed and postponed and postponed without any consequences. So this was the way kind of to motivate lawmakers, both Democrats and Republicans, to get budget deals done. And obviously that has not been the case. One thing to know is that, first and foremost, these budget cuts don't really come into effect until April. And then there's this whole talk if, first of all, they could get budget deals done still before the end of the fiscal year, October 1st. And then in reality, this 1% cut would just vanish, go away. Second, the other scenario is that they will, even if they do what they call a continuing resolution or postpone budget deals until the rest of the fiscal year, some Democrats also say that this 1% cut should also go away. So there's a lot of ways where this budget cut will not really go into effect. In fact, the likelihood that it will is very small. But it's an interesting thing to note. And it's interesting for the ongoing budget negotiations in the way that it creates some weird mixtures of incentives and disincentives for policymakers to get a bill done. For example, it looks like the current top-line spending proposal that's currently on the table would probably be higher than if they just went ahead with the 1% cut that's currently in place for Republicans. So Republicans might have an incentive not to get a bill done now, for example.
Even if it kicks the can down the road, as you say, it kicks the can down to a place where we're getting very, very close to the elections in November. So the political tensions are going to be even higher in the early fall, where they're going to sit down again. So it's something to watch. I mean, and even with these cuts that could have a deflationary effect, you still have the Inflation Reduction Act money being pumped out. You still have a lot of de facto fiscal stimulus programs running in the US. So you have a lot of public money being pumped out. You have a lot of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve still being pumped out. So you have a lot of what I would call fiscal stimulus really from the government. I don't really expect that to stop anytime before the elections. I mean, everything is about these elections in November, both the presidential and the congressional. So I think that's really very much where the buck stops.
Yeah, it might be useful to viewers also to get a quick status on where these budget negotiations for fiscal year 24 is at. They are very close to getting a deal done. Over the weekend, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Speaker Mike Johnson basically agreed that they would stick with the top line spending numbers from the debt ceiling deal in June, which is around $773 billion in non-defense discretionary spending, which includes $69 billion in side deals. It's these side deals that was kind of the contentious point, but it looks like Democrats will get their way, essentially. It's still a little bit nerving if they can actually formally get this bill passed in both the Senate and the House before the first shutdown deadline in, I believe, 8 days or so. Just completely practically, if that's possible. But just for investors to know that I don't think they should be worried about the potential of a long-term shutdown or a deal will eventually and probably quite soon be struck on spending deals for fiscal year 24.
I mean, that's at least very reassuring with all the other stuff that's going on around the globe, and that's really, really good to hear. I think that's pretty much what we wanted to cover this week. We have a Taiwanese election coming up this weekend that could be a complete nothing burger, or that could set off a military standoff in the South China Sea. We'll have to see, basically, what happens there. We'll get back to that next week. For now, thank you very much, Anne, for joining this, our inaugural episode. And to all you listeners out there, please like and subscribe the video if you like what you've seen, and give us a lot of feedback. I mean, this is sort of a tryout, so let's see how this fares and what you would like to see in coming episodes. Thank you very much for watching.